Captain Lee Minho sat in his command chair aboard the reconnaissance vessel's Silent Dawn. The ship moved slowly through a field of floating rocks and debris. Space was quiet around them, but inside the ship, tension filled the air like electricity. Before a storm, the bridge crew worked at their stations with nervous energy. They had been drifting here for 3 hours, listening to stolen transmissions from the Hegemony Coalition. What they heard made everyone's hands shake. "Captain Park," Sora called from her communications station. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The decryption is complete. You need to see this." Minho walked over to her station. The screen showed lines of text that made his stomach drop. He read the words twice, then 3 times, hoping he was wrong. "Are you certain about this data?" he asked. Sora nodded. Her face was pale, and her fingers trembled as she pointed to the screen. "Now the Hegemony archives are clear, Captain. Earth was designated as cleansed 300 years ago. Every star map, every database entry, they've been systematically purged." The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Kim Ji-ho, their young navigator, looked up from his station with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir Ji-ho said slowly, according to this, the colonies were told Earth died from solar expansion, natural causes. But these files show bombardment patterns, energy weapon signatures, orbital strike coordinates." Minho closed his eyes and gripped the back of Sora's chair. Metal was cold under his fingers. For 3 centuries, every human settlement across the galaxy believed their homeworld had simply died. The sun had grown too hot, they were told. The planet became uninhabitable. Humanity had evacuated in time, but Earth itself was lost to the forces of nature. The truth was so much worse. "They murdered our planet," Minho whispered. Then they erased it from history. The Hegemony Coalition controlled most of the galaxy. They were supposed to be peacekeepers, bringing order to the stars. But this document told a different story. Earth had been seen as a threat. Humanity was growing too fast, spreading to too many worlds, asking too many questions about hegemony rule. So they had decided to solve the problem. One day, while most humans were spread across distant colonies, the hegemony fleet surrounded Earth. They used weapons that could crack planets like eggs. Then they began the careful work of rewriting history. "How many know the real story?" Minho asked. Sora checked her data again. "Based on these intercepts, maybe a dozen ships like ours, small reconnaissance vessels, deep space explorers, ships that were far from home when it happened. We might be the last ones who remember." Of this knowledge settled on Minho's shoulders like a heavy coat. Around the bridge, his crew stared at their stations. Some were crying quietly. Others just sat in shocked silence. Chief Engineer Cho Aram spoke from the back of the bridge. "Captain, what do we do with this information? If we tell the colonies, the hegemony will hunt us down. If we stay quiet, Earth stays dead," Minho finished. He walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of humans lived their lives never knowing the truth about their birth world. They celebrated Hegemony Day, grateful for the protection of their alien rulers. They taught their children to be thankful that humanity had been saved from dying Earth. "All lies," Sir Ji-ho said quietly. "There's more in the files. The hegemony didn't just destroy Earth. They've been watching human colonies for centuries. Any settlement that grows too strong, asks too many questions, or shows signs of independence, they have contingency plans." Minho turned around. "What kind of plans?" "The same kind they used on Earth." The silence stretched on. Outside asteroids drifted past the ship like ancient tombstones. Each piece of rock looked lonely in the darkness, floating without purpose or direction. "We can't let them get away with this," Sora said. Her voice was stronger now, filled with anger instead of fear. "Every human in the galaxy deserves to know what really happened. The hegemony has armies, fleets, entire worlds under their control," Aram pointed out. "We have one small ship and a handful of crew. We have the truth," Minho replied. "And we have each other." He walked back to his command chair and sat down. The leather was worn from years of use, comfortable and familiar. But nothing felt comfortable anymore. The universe had changed in the space of an hour. "Plot a course for the Kepler colonies," he ordered. "Quiet running, maximum stealth. Need to find others who might remember? And then? Jiho asked. Minho looked at each of his crew members. These people had become his family over years of service together. Now they were all that stood between truth and oblivion. Then we remind the galaxy that Earth existed, that it was beautiful, that it was murdered, that somewhere in the darkness, it's still calling its children home. The silent dawn turned slowly and began its journey into the unknown. Carrying the most dangerous cargo in the galaxy, the truth about humanity's greatest loss. 3 months had passed since the silent dawn discovered the terrible truth about Earth. The ship now moved like a shadow through forgotten parts of space, visiting places that official maps no longer showed. Captain Lee Minho had turned his vessel into something the hegemony feared most, a keeper of forbidden knowledge. The old military codes had worked better than Minho expected. Deep space reconnaissance ships used secret communication methods that dated back centuries. These codes were buried so deep in ship computers that even the hegemony's systematic purging had missed them. One by one, other captains had responded to Minho's careful messages. Now 5 ships floated in the darkness around a dead space station. The station had been abandoned for decades, its lights dark and its corridors empty. But today, it served as the meeting place for humanity's most dangerous secret society. Minho floated through the station's central hub, where artificial gravity had long since failed. The other captains had arrived first, their faces grim in. The emergency lighting, Captain Yoon Gi-won, from the Forgotten Hope, was a woman with steel in her eyes, and gray streaking her black hair. She had been fighting the hegemony longer than any of them. "Thank you all for coming," Minho said as he settled into the makeshift conference area they had created. Old cargo containers served as chairs around a salvage table. Captain Yoon reached into her jacket and pulled out something that made everyone lean forward. It was a small data crystal, no bigger than a thumbnail, but it seemed to glow with importance. "My archaeologist, Dr. Shin Tae-yeon, found this hidden in a maintenance shaft on Kepler Station," she said, placing the crystal on the table. It was sealed behind fake wall panels, protected by old encryption. When we cracked it open, we found treasures. She activated a small portable player, and music filled the dead station. It was a song none of them recognized, but somehow they all knew it was from Earth. The melody was strange and beautiful, with instruments that no longer existed anywhere in the galaxy. Human poetry, music files, even children's songs from Earth, Yoon continued. Someone's been preserving our culture for 300 years. Hiding it, protecting it, passing it down in secret. Captain Lee Hoonhwa from the Starbound was the youngest among them, barely 30 years old. But his ship had visited more colonies than any other vessel in their small fleet. "The resistance is bigger than we thought," he said, excitement in his voice. "There are whole families on the rim. Colonies who've kept Earth's memory alive in secret. Grandparents telling stories to children about blue skies and green grass. Parents teaching old songs that supposedly came from the first world." "How many?" asked Captain Kim Woojin from the Drifting Star. "Hard to say exactly. Maybe thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. They don't advertise it for obvious reasons. But once you know what to look for, the signs are everywhere." Park Sora had been working on her portable computer throughout the meeting. She looked up with tired eyes but spoke with conviction. "I've spent weeks analyzing hegemony communication patterns," she said. "Yes. They're using something called quantum hunters. These are AI systems designed to detect and eliminate any mention of Earth from digital networks. The moment someone types Earth or Sol System or even Blue Planet into a computer, these hunters find it and delete it." "How do we fight something like that?" Captain Yoon asked. Sora smiled for the first time in months. "You're incredibly sophisticated when it comes to digital information. But they can't hunt what's stored in human hearts and minds. They can't delete a lullaby that a mother sings to her child. They can't erase a story told around a campfire." The group fell silent as they considered this. Outside the station, stars wheeled slowly in their eternal dance. Inside, 6 humans planned to wage war against an empire that controlled most of the galaxy. Captain Park Jinwoo from the Wandering Ghost had been quiet throughout the meeting. He was older than the others, with scars on his hands from years of dangerous work. "I've been to the outer colonies," he said slowly. "Places where hegemony control is weak. Some of the settlements there have festivals they call remembrance. Days they claim it's about honoring lost family members, but the timing is interesting. They hold these festivals on dates that match old Earth calendars. They're remembering Earth without saying they're remembering Earth," Minho realized. "Exactly. And there's something else. Some of the older colonists have tattoos. Symbols that look like abstract art, but when you put them together..." He activated his own display, showing images he had secretly recorded. "They form a map." The map showed a star system with a yellow sun and a blue planet. Earth's location. Preserved in ink and flesh. Minho studied the faces around him. Each captain carried the same determination burning in their eyes. They had all lost something precious, but they had found something even more valuable: purpose. "Then we become the keepers," he said. "We preserve what they tried to destroy." The meeting continued through the station's artificial night cycle. They planned routes, shared information, and divided responsibilities. By the time they parted ways, humanity's underground resistance had truly begun. The Silent Dawn departed the dead station with new purpose. Carrying hope into the darkness between stars, the underground movement had grown beyond anything Captain Lee Minho could have imagined 6 months ago. What started as 5 desperate ship captains meeting in a dead space station had become a network that stretched across 17 star systems. Hidden in asteroid mines, abandoned warehouses, in secret rooms beneath colony buildings, Earth's memory lived on. But growth brought new challenges. Not every human wanted to hear the truth about their homeworld. Minna stood in the main hall of Prospera Colony's government building, facing a room full of angry colonists. The colony was one of humanity's most successful settlements, with gleaming cities and prosperous farms. The people here lived comfortable lives under hegemony protection. They weren't eager to risk that comfort for the sake of a dead planet. Governor Hondayan was a large man with expensive clothes and soft hands. He had built his political career on cooperation with the hegemony, and Minho's message threatened everything he stood for. "You're asking me to risk everything my people have built?" the governor said, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "The hegemony protects us. They keep the peace, maintain trade routes, prevent wars between species. Why should we bite the hand that feeds us?" Several colonists nodded in agreement. These were people who had never known hardship, never questioned authority, never wondered why their history books were so thin when it came to humanity's origins. Dr. Choi. Minji stepped forward from behind Minho. She was the Resistance's chief historian, a small woman with fierce eyes who had spent years collecting fragments of Earth's story. She carried a portable hologram projector that contained the most precious and terrible treasure in the galaxy. "The hegemony murdered our homeworld," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "Let me show you what protection looks like to them." She activated the holographic display, and the room filled with 3-dimensional images that made everyone gasp. Earth appeared before them, as it had been in its final days. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents teeming with life. And then came the hegemony fleet. Massive ships surrounding the planet. Like vultures around carrion, the colonists watched in stunned silence as the bombardment began. Energy weapons that could crack mountains struck Earth's surface again and again. The oceans boiled away. The atmosphere was stripped into space. What had been humanity's birth world became a smoking ball of dead rock in less than 6 hours. Some colonists wept openly. Others turned away, unable to watch. A few looked angry, but Minho couldn't tell if they were angry at the hegemony or at him for showing them this horror. "That's not possible," Governor Han said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The historical records clearly state that Earth died from solar expansion, natural causes." "Those records were rewritten," Dr. Choi replied. "Every database, every archive, every school textbook. The hegemony spent decades erasing the truth and replacing it with lies." The hologram continued playing, showing the careful work that came after Earth's destruction. Hegemony ships methodically hunting down any evidence of what had really happened. Computer systems being purged. Witnesses being silenced. History being murdered alongside the planet. Jung Susman had been standing quietly in the corner, still wearing the black clothing he used for infiltration work. He was the Resistance's best spy, capable of breaking into hegemony facilities that were supposed to be impregnable. He had just returned from his most dangerous mission yet. "There's more," he announced, stepping into the light. His face was grim, but there was excitement in his eyes. "I found the Quantum Vault location. It's hidden in the hegemony's most secure data fortress, buried under layers of encryption that would take normal computers centuries to crack." He activated his own display, showing architectural plans and security layouts. Earth's true coordinates, the weapon specifications used to destroy it, even the names of who ordered the attack. It's all there, waiting to be retrieved. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. This was proof that even the most skeptical colonists couldn't deny. But Jung's expression darkened as he continued. "The intelligence I gathered revealed something else. Something unexpected." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We have allies we didn't know about. Some of the hegemony species opposed Earth's destruction. They were overruled by the dominant factions, but they've been waiting for 300 years? Waiting for what?" Governor Han asked. "For humans to learn the truth, for us to stand up and demand justice. There are entire species within the hegemony who regret what happened to Earth. They've been secretly preserving evidence, protecting witnesses, preparing for the day when humanity would be ready to fight back." Minho felt a spark of hope ignite. In his chest, the resistance had always seemed impossibly small compared to the vast hegemony empire. But if they had alien allies, if there were cracks in the hegemony's unity, then maybe they had a chance. The colonists were talking among themselves, now their voices rising as shock gave way to anger. A middle-aged farmer stood up, his weathered hands clenched into fists. "My grandmother used to tell stories about trees that touched the sky," he said. "I thought they were fairy tales. But she was remembering Earth, wasn't she?" Dr. Choi nodded. "Many of the old stories are actually memories, passed down through generations." Governor Han looked around the room at his people. The comfortable certainty in his eyes was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. "What do you need from us?" he asked quietly. The moment had arrived after months of careful planning. At exactly 1200 hours Galactic Standard Time, the truth about Earth began broadcasting across 47 human worlds simultaneously. Hidden transmitters that had been secretly installed by resistance agents came alive. Pirate radio stations broke into regular programming. Communication arrays that should have been impossible to hijack suddenly carried a message that would shake the galaxy. Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge of the Silent Dawn, watching history unfold on dozens of screens around him. Each monitor showed a different human colony receiving the broadcast for the first time. The message was simple but devastating. Earth had not died from natural causes. It had been murdered by the Hegemony Coalition, and the evidence was undeniable. The reactions came faster than anyone expected. On New Seoul, crowds poured into the streets within an hour of the broadcast. They carried signs demanding answers from their government. Some waved images of Earth taken from the forbidden archives. Others simply stood in shocked silence, processing the magnitude of what they had learned. "Captain," called out Navigation Officer Bae Sunho from his station. "We're receiving priority communications from non-human vessels. The Keth Republic is requesting immediate diplomatic contact. So are the Wanderer clans and the Stellar Nomads." Minho raised an eyebrow. He had expected human colonies to react strongly, but alien species reaching out was something they hadn't planned for. It seemed the revelation was fracturing more than just human society. The mining colonies of the Outer Rim acted with typical frontier decisiveness. Within 6 hours of the broadcast, 12 separate settlements declared independence from hegemony. Oversight, their messages were brief but clear. They would no longer accept protection from the killers of Earth. Lieutenant Inari was monitoring military frequencies from her position near the communications array. Her face was pale as she listened to encrypted hegemony transmissions. "Captain, their fleet commanders are arguing over open channels," she reported. "Some are refusing orders to fire on civilian protests. Admiral Korax of the Third Fleet just told his superiors that his ships will not participate in what he called another Earth. The news kept getting better. 3 entire species had withdrawn from the Hegemony Coalition, citing moral concerns about humanity's treatment. The Gentle Builders, an ancient race of engineers, issued a formal apology for their government's silence during Earth's destruction. The Crystal Singers, beings of pure energy who rarely spoke to other species, sent a simple message. We remember the blue world. We grieve. But the hegemony's response was swift and brutal. Reports began flooding in from colonies that had declared independence or hosted major protests. The pattern was always the same. Overwhelming force applied without mercy. Park. Sora's hands shook as she read the casualty reports streaming across her console. Her voice cracked when she spoke. They're making examples, Captain. The colony on Haven's Rest... They sent an entire battle group. Orbital bombardment, ground assault, systematic destruction. There are no survivors. 3 million people gone. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of ship systems and the quiet. Sobbing of crew members who had friends on Haven's Rest, Minho felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. The truth had freed humanity's spirit, but it was also getting people killed. Similar reports came in from other colonies. Peaceful protesters shot down in the streets, get entire city blocks leveled by orbital strikes. Resistance leaders dragged from their homes and executed publicly as examples to others. The casualties are in the hundreds of thousands already, Sora continued, wiping tears from her eyes. And it's getting worse. They're not just targeting military installations anymore. Schools, hospitals, civilian shelters... Nothing is off limits. But for every colony that was crushed, 2 more rose up. The truth about Earth had spread too far and too fast to contain. Human settlements that had never questioned hegemony rule were demanding independence. Colonial militias were forming. Despite the overwhelming odds, young people who had grown up believing the lies about Earth's natural death were now ready to die fighting for justice. Jung Seokman's intelligence network reported that the resistance was growing faster than the hegemony could suppress it. For every leader they executed, 10 more stepped forward. For every transmitter they destroyed, 5 new ones appeared. The quantum vault data is being distributed through every available channel, he reported. Even if they hunt down every resistance cell, the information is already spreading through civilian networks. Parents are telling their children, teachers are sharing it in schools. The truth has its own momentum now. Minho studied the tactical displays showing hegemony fleet movements. They were massing forces for a major operation, pulling ships from across the galaxy to crush the human uprising. Before it could spread further, he thought about the dead planet that waited somewhere. In the darkness, the homeworld that had been erased from every star map, but never from human hearts. 300 years of lies were crumbling, but the cost of truth was measured in blood. Signal the fleet, he commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. All resistance ships, all allied vessels, all free humans who still remember what we're fighting for, converge on the coordinates. He paused, looking at each member of his crew. These people had become his family through years of shared struggle and sacrifice. It's time to go home. The hyperspace jump ended with a flash of light that briefly outshone the stars. 200. Ships materialized in empty space, their hulls gleaming in the pale light of a dying yellow sun. Captain Lee Minho gripped his command chair as the silent dawn settled into normal space alongside the largest human fleet ever assembled. But they were not alone. Captain, Chief Science Officer Oh Kyung called from her station, her voice tight. With emotion, sensors are picking up massive terraforming scars on the 3rd planet. The atmosphere was stripped away, the oceans boiled off, but the planetary core is intact. Through the main view screen, Minho could see it clearly for the first time. Earth. Humanity's murdered homeworld hung in the darkness like a gray stone, its surface marked with terrible wounds that would never heal naturally. 300 years ago, this world had been blue and green and alive. It was a monument to hegemony cruelty. The hegemony fleet was waiting for them. Massive dreadnoughts hung in space around Earth like vultures protecting carrion. there. Black holes bristled with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Even at this distance, Minho could count over 50 warships, each one larger than anything in the human resistance fleet. Admiral Kong Jiang's voice crackled over the communication. A ray from the flagship Rising Phoenix. She was an elderly woman who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment, even though she had never believed it would come. "All vessels, this is our moment," she announced to the assembled fleet. "We stand at the grave of our homeworld, facing the killers who thought they could erase us from history. Whatever happens here, we make sure the galaxy remembers that Earth died fighting." The battle began with a silence that seemed to stretch forever. Then the hegemony dreadnoughts opened fire, and space filled with deadly light. Energy beams that could crack mountains reached across the void toward the human ships. But the Resistance fleet had learned hard lessons in the months since the truth was revealed. Human ships were smaller and more agile than the massive hegemony vessels. They darted between the lumbering dreadnoughts like angry insects, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could find them. Lieutenant Yunari monitored the tactical displays with fierce concentration. "It's multiple enemy hits on the Braveheart and New Hope," she reported. "But they're still fighting. The hegemony ships are having trouble tracking our smaller vessels." The battle was fierce, but the humans were not alone. As the fight raged around Earth's corpse, new ships emerged from hyperspace. The graceful vessels of the Keth Republic joined the battle, their advanced shields protecting damaged human ships. The massive mining barges of the Wanderer clans had been converted into weapons platforms, their industrial lasers cutting through hegemony armor like paper. "Captain," Navigation Officer Bei Sunho called out with excitement in his voice, "we're receiving support from the Crystal Singers. They're jamming hegemony communications across the entire system." Even more alien allies appeared as the battle continued. Species that had been silent for centuries spoke with weapons fire. The gentle builders, masters of engineering, had modified their construction ships into mobile repair platforms that could fix battle damage in minutes. The ancient Watchers, who claimed to have witnessed the birth of stars, arrived in vessels that seemed made of solidified starlight. The silent dawn dove toward Earth's surface, weaving between the massive shapes of battling capital ships. Enemy fire streaked past the viewports as Minho's crew fought to reach their destination. The ship shuddered under near misses, but kept flying toward the dead world below. As they broke through Earth's thin atmosphere, Minho could see the planet's surface clearly for the first time. Great scars marked the continents where cities had once stood. The ocean beds were cracked and empty, filled only with dust and the skeletons of what had once been coral reefs. But underneath the devastation, he could still see the shape of familiar continents, the curves of ancient coastlines. "It's still Earth," he whispered. Park Sora was monitoring communications from across the system, tears streaming down her face as she listened to reports from the battle above. Suddenly, her expression changed to one of amazement. "Captain," she called out, her voice breaking with emotion, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple hegemony vessels. Their command structure is collapsing. Ships are switching sides or refusing to fight." The tide of battle had turned. 3 centuries of guilt and suppressed conscience had finally broken the hegemony's unity. Species that had stayed silent during Earth's destruction could no longer stomach another genocide. Fleet commanders who had followed orders without question were now questioning everything. One by one, the great dreadnoughts powered down their weapons. Some tried to retreat but found their escape routes blocked by former allies who had decided the killing had to stop. Others simply surrendered, their crews unwilling to continue a war they could no longer justify. 6 months later, the first atmospheric processors landed on Earth's scarred surface. The machines were gifts from the gentle builders, technology that could slowly restore a dead world to life. It would take decades, perhaps centuries, but Earth would breathe again. Children, born on distant colonies, were already asking their parents when they could visit the homeworld. Engineers were drawing plans for new cities that would rise from the ashes of the old. Poets were writing verses about blue skies and green grass that existed now only in memory and hope. The hegemony had tried to erase humanity's past. Instead, they had forged its future.